Welcome to the channel. In this video, I will be providing 3 reasons why the theory of evolution contradicts science itself from a scientific and logical standpoint, free of bias. Despite what many of you may believe, the theory of evolution is just that, a theory. The definition of a theory is as follows: a supposition or system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on general principles independent of the thing to be explained. What this means is a theory can be discredited as opposed to a law which has been tested and people have attempted to discredit it, and its grounds have remained unfazed. For this reason, I will be using officially accepted scientific laws as well as an official law of logic in order to discredit evolution and its scientific grounds. The first point I will be addressing, which the theory of evolution clearly states, is as follows. The formation of new genes is a primary driving force of evolution in all organisms. This can easily be discredited by fact using the second law of thermodynamics, which is as follows. The second law of thermodynamics is a physical law based on universal experience concerning heat and energy interconversions. One simple statement of the law is that heat always moves from the hotter object to colder objects, or downhill. Now you may be thinking, hey, the law of thermodynamics only applies to heat and energy, so it can't be used for an example in order to discredit evolution. As an answer to this, I will state the first law of biology, which is as follows. All living organisms obey the law of thermodynamics. This is fairly self-explanatory. If all organisms follow the second law of thermodynamics, then this would mean that all organisms are constantly losing information, thereby directly opposing the evolutionist belief that the formation of new genes is this primary driving force of evolution in all organisms. Saying that new genes are the primary driving force is to say that new information rises out of old information, which would result in an addition of information which again would directly contradict the second law of thermodynamics. With this next point, I will be discrediting the evolutionist belief that life arose out of inorganic material. First, I'd like to state what evolution officially declares is the origin of the first organic material. It is as follows. When Earth was formed 4.5 billion years ago, there was a sterile ball of rock that was slammed by meteorites and carpeted with erupting volcanoes. Within a billion years, it had become inhabited by microorganisms. Alternatively, some evolutionists also state the following: that hydrogen atmosphere would have favored the emergence of the simple organic molecules that later formed more complex molecules such as RNA, and the planetary crash pushed back the likely birth date for RNA and possibly life emergence by hundreds of millions of years. So right off the bat, we see that the first account just sounds ridiculous. However, you may think that the latter account is far more viable. The same problem persists with both theories, and that problem is the law of biogenesis, which is as follows. The law of biogenesis is the principle stating that the life arises from pre-existing life, not from non-living material. This directly discredits both theories, due to the first stating there was a sterile ball of rock that was slammed by meteorites and carpeted with erupting volcanoes. Within a billion years it had been inhabited by microorganisms, and the second stating the hydrogen atmosphere would have favored the emergence of simple organic molecules that later formed more complex molecules such as RNA. All of the stated materials are inorganic, such as a sterile ball of rock, meteorites, erupting volcanoes, and hydrogen, which means that life could not have arose from any of them, which immediately discredits both theories indefinitely. The final point within evolution is slightly different due to there being many examples of it. However, I will only be providing 2, which are directly related for the sake of time. Evolution declares the following. Biostratigraphic correlation uses index fossils to determine strata age. It also states, the principle of faunal succession makes it possible to determine the relative age of unknown fossils and correlate fossil sites across large discontinuous areas based on the age of the strata. Individually, these each seem to be viable options for identifying the approximate age of index fossils and strata, which normally falls into millions or even billions of years old. However, these principles put side by side cause a fallacy known as circular reasoning, which is as follows. Circular reasoning is a logical fallacy in which the person begins with what they are trying to end with. It is a pragmatic defect in an argument whereby the premise are just as much in need of proof as the evidence as the conclusion, and as a consequence, the argument fails to persuade. To put it shortly, circular reasoning is when the primary source of evidence for a theory or hypothesis is the very thing it aims to prove. In other words, if point A is said to prove point B, and point B is said to prove point A. This is the very thing this case of evolutionist proof does. They say the age of the strata determines the age of the fossils, and they say the age of the fossils determines the age of the strata. They both aim to prove each other, whereby discrediting both theories. As a bit of an extra point, all theories in regards to the origin of life are purely speculation, faith-based, because for something to truly be scientific, it must be testable and replicatable. A true scientific theory uses mass amounts of repeated experimentation in order to prove the point to be true. For something to be a law, it must not only prove itself, but all others must be disproven. The theory of evolution is at its most credible speculation based on a limited source of evidence, and at its least credible a faith-based belief similar to religion, except in place of putting its faith in God or deity, it is placing its faith in nature. Alright, so now that I have laid out all the points which I have selected in order to discredit evolution, I will of course let you, the viewer, decide what it is that you believe based off of the facts you have gathered and those which I have laid out before you. With that, I hope you took into consideration the points which I have brought up, and I'll see you in the next video.